technology like seems so easy.
Hello and welcome to the third Social Media Power Talk for Social Media Today. Today we're looking at social media we're looking at search engine optimization in the social media marketing age. And we've been talking about search engine optimization, SEO for short, ever since there was a search to actually talk about. There's a funny thing which happens when we actually look at the activities which govern search engine optimization and search itself. Because at the interface where machine meets human, we get a funny psychological element where it reflects sometimes the best and the worst in terms of the practices which we come to bring in the world of business and search. Throughout its career, search engine optimization has actually reflected a lot of the human economic principles, which tend to look for shortcuts in terms of giving us the maximum returns for the least possible effort. And therein has always lain a problem. Today we're actually exploring some of that, and to discuss all this with us, we have a marketing legend in the SEO industry, Bruce Clay himself. So with that, we introduce Bruce.
Hello.
And Bruce, we're very, very pleased to have you, and we're starting a little bit late, and with a lot of things on the table already. Everybody's been anticipating your arrival.
Thank you.
And we're going to start. Usually I start by asking people to introduce themselves and tell us how they got into search, but in many ways you very much almost stand for search itself, because you're one of the people who popularized the term search engine optimization, or SEO. So we're going to dispense with that, and we're going to start with questions straight away. So the first question of the day is SEO dead?
No.
And from that we move on, right? But let's look at this a little bit. We do hear that SEO is dead, and we hear it again and again and again. It seems to be one of those periodic elements where we feel that search engine optimization is an activity which we have no choice but to engage in. And at some point it becomes very complicated, it becomes very expensive for businesses. It begins to become almost something which siphons money off the bottom line. And that gives rise to a golden future, within inverted commas, where SEO as a practice will simply not be necessary. And we know this isn't true. And you must encounter this in terms of rumors, in terms of articles, and also in the expectations of some of your clients as you move through the industry. So really, why do we get the persistence of this? Why are people always asking, with every new iteration of search, with every new development which happens in the field, why are they asking, is SEO dead?
In the beginning, SEO was rather simple. You optimize a page. In the Google world, you get some links, and you would rank. And I'd say up till about 6-7 years ago, SEO was not as complex as it is today. So I've actually had interviews where I said SEO is dead as it was. It has evolved. Today's SEO, everybody would understand, is not like 10 years ago, or 5 years ago, or even 2 years ago. So SEO has actually changed in what goes into SEO. It is far more technical. It is far more reaching. It has much more visibility. More people think they're doing SEO that aren't. And some people used to just do link development and called it SEO. And that was not even the complete set of things. As the world has evolved, SEO has done two things. One, it has persisted, absolutely, by becoming more technically adapted to the requirements in order to improve traffic.
Mm.
The second thing it has done is it has actually required that the practitioner become broader, that they have to actually talk to the pay-per-click team and the social media team and the web development team. If you look at the current algorithms, the algorithms are no longer controlled by on-page or just off-page. Google announced on April 21st, you have to be mobile friendly. Well, you know, the marketing department, without cooperation from the IT department, web design team, is not going to comply with that. So
You're making a very important point here. I'm interjecting. You're basically showing how the application of search or search engine optimization has evolved from something which could arguably have been done by one person or a small team working in isolation to something which is a lot more holistic in terms of how business actually works and how it functions.
yes,
What challenges does that present for somebody, let's say, somebody in the industry like you?
I am fortunate in that I have, you know, an agency, and we're multinational, so I've got people that are able to spend time paying attention to it. I think that part of the evolution that's worth mentioning, in the beginning, many of the people that were doing SEOs grew up by being pseudo programmers. They were doing web design, maybe programming, they were technical, they came from technical backgrounds, you're editing HTML, that was not what marketing did. The problem is that they grew up in that world and never had a marketing course. They maybe never read a book on marketing. They don't really understand personas or communities or any of the things that are now fundamental to proper targeting and understanding who it is that your website needs to reach and the terminology they use when they do queries. In the beginning, it was just one keyword, edit the page, get some links, you were an SEO. Today, it is much broader.
And I think I've got to mention for the benefit of the audience who don't know, the holistic approach to doing anything in terms of search is something which you have pioneered in many ways. And you were one of the original voices to approach search engine optimization as something which happened more than just in a technical way where you actually did edit HTML and made sure the keywords were there. And admittedly, you did it before it was even a thing. So I'm going to have to ask you, what sort of led you to that kind of approach?
Well, all right, so my background, I'll give you just a simple, I have a bachelor's in math and computer science and an MBA. So I've been trained a lot to think marketing. I've been trained as a programmer, and we've written tools, and I wrote personally a lot of our tools. The thing that had happened, and it was probably maybe 7 years ago, 8 years ago maybe, is that I recognized that in an ideal Google world, and this is sort of let's talk to the computer in Star Trek, right? In that world, you don't really do searches like you do now, and the computer's going to try to figure out what you really mean by that query and why did you want the query so they can give you the best kind of an answer to your query. And Google has for a long time, and as others, they've been trying to come up with the ability to properly get rid of ambiguity and make it so that the audience or the person doing the query gets something closer to their personal interests. So as soon as that happened, it was clear that just editing title tags wasn't going to do it. You had to be bigger than that.
Yes.
And
well, so
I started doing it.
So basically, it was just a confluence of all these skills and a skill set which allowed you to be able to see that. And you saw it way ahead of everybody else because there are two things with SEO in the past. First of all, it tended to be a hit and miss affair, depending on who you met and who you actually agreed to do it for you. And secondly, it was always reactive. We never sort of really went in front of search engines. We never looked forward to see how they were evolving. Everybody seemed to be chasing the results because that's what their clients ask for. And this has drastically changed. And again, to your credit, in the past you've always promoted the approach, which is a lot more holistic, a lot more broader in view, and entailed a lot more than just one element. You've spoken.
Yeah. We find, in general, everybody that's really at sort of a high end, and I think it isn't just myself, but you kind of have to do futures research. You have to imagine search 2 to 5 years out, because it'll take you a year to develop the ability to be 2 years out. Yes. And if you see and envision what the search is going to be like in 2 years, then you know to do it. 2 years ago, we knew that mobile was going to conquer the world. We knew that Google was going to shift their emphasis from desktop to mobile. Just like 40 years ago, the world switched from mainframe computers to PCs. And now people are switching from PCs to tablets and mobile.
Yep, exactly.
If you think about the way it works, that is how it works. When you think about the evolution of the user, and by the way, you can't just think about the evolution of search from the search engine point of view, because they're driven by the users. And when you think about the evolution of the user, we're going to know that 50% of all people working by the year 2000 are going to be millennials. These are people that are really bigger than what we're used to seeing the last 5 years. The evolution of the user behavior has changed. And we're to the point where we don't have a choice. We must adapt. So given that the searcher is going to be different, given that the behavior is going to change across the board, given that the search engines are following the user, if we can see where the user is going to be, we know where the search engine is going to be going. Voice search is going to be big. Mobile search is already here. We know that Google's in the business of making money. I bet if I had a show of hands, everybody would raise them. We know Google's in the business of making money, and we know that 80-some% of all clicks are in the organic space.
Yeah, exactly. We've got
the best way for them to make money, by the way, is mobile, is social.
Yep.
That interface is what's going to drive demand.
Well, I think on that note, we've actually got a comment coming in from Alex. Alex, could you please bring it up?
We do, yeah. This transitions perfectly with what you're talking about with social. Cynthia Turcott, I'm sorry if I messed up your last name, she asks, I read that Google has inked a deal with Twitter to start indexing tweets. I think most of us have heard about this. Does this mean that social reach, in particular Twitter reach, is going to become a more significant ranking factor than previously?
That's pretty straightforward. The answer is yes, no, yes. In the beginning, what was going on with the fire hose from Twitter was that Google was picking up links, and that they were at the time followed links, and that was influencing Google. And spammers figured it out, and then ultimately the Twitter interface died off. My belief is that now it's going to come back, but Google isn't going to look at it so much as links as much as it is about buzz. And what I expect us to see is that if there is a website getting a lot of comments and it's driving traffic through Twitter, what those comments are going to do is cause a temporary, and I'd say 24-hour impact in the Google rankings. It will perhaps even promote it up into the first page if you were close. And for that opportunity, you can get some traffic as a result of having a lot of people comment on Twitter. One comment isn't going to do it. Hundreds might have some influence in some topic areas. It'll vary. But I do expect that ultimately this is a factor of buzz, that people are finding this particular page of high interest, and Google's going to give it its day in the sun. I would think
I
that
think,
as soon as it died off, that page would vanish.
Yep. I think on that note, we're going to bring in the second part of the show, really, where you've spoken before about the cube principle which you apply, and this is of interest to both the marketers in our audience and also those who are webmasters, because the marketers, because it shows the multiplicity of factors which go into SEO. For webmasters, it shows the elements which they must now take into account when they actually think about how search works and search engine optimization works. So could you tell us a little bit about the cube principle? I think actually we have a clip on this. Have we got a clip on this, John?
No clip, just an image.
Okay, no problem. So let's have Bruce tell us about this then. What exactly is the cube principle?
Okay, so I think that historically, people have thought about SEO either as the only element or even part of a marketing program where marketing would run it generally all by themselves, and there would be some influence on marketing. And we saw that spill over where we need a little bit more content. So there was sort of a two-dimensional aspect to it. And I believe that the proper way of viewing marketing, which is digital marketing for SEO or search, is to look at it more three-dimensionally, at least. That there is sort of a spatial relationship between all the components, and in a spherical or cube way, those all touch each other. You could imagine that pay-per-click deals with social, and pay-per-click deals with SEO, and pay-per-click has landing pages. But you can also imagine that web design, when they redesign a site, they have to go back and make sure that the SEO is right and that the pay-per-click landing pages URLs are still right. And they have to worry about quality score, and now you have performance, and you have canonicals, and you have duplicate content, and you have all of these components of a business. And I'd say almost every component of the business that has anything to do with what a user would ever see, that is actually a single unit. It may be three-dimensional, but it is a single operating unit, and that if those functions do not communicate or even cooperate at any good level, you're going to be destined to fail. We've seen way too many organizations put the pay-per-click in one floor and the SEO in another floor, and they don't even talk at lunch. And forget figuring out what words convert. Figuring out, oh my God, we have a sale coming, and pay-per-click knows about it, but SEO wasn't warned, or web design didn't know about it. What's this mobile-friendly thing? I mean, all of those pieces require a spatial relationship to be mentally thought of.
I think what you're explaining is absolutely fantastic, and it's basically the way any SEO agency of today in the 21st century should function. And the problem you just mentioned is a very real one, in that the compartmentalization of any kind of corporation is actually a fault which they're blind to, because their processes work internally, as they always have done, and it tends to handicap them. And I see it quite frequently. So really, the challenge here is in terms of the agency. How do you actually get to the stage where you can guide them to that kind of communication within the organization, which suddenly makes you a productive element in the setup?
Sorry about that, David. Not sure where that's coming from.
That's okay, don't worry. I was just double checking to make sure it wasn't me, but it wasn't.
No, it's one of the inlines. It's my fault,
right,
totally.
no
Sorry,
problem.
guys.
That's okay.
So,
So back to you, because
compartmentalization.
Yeah, because essentially what's happening is, they have a problem. The problem is SEO. They don't get it. They get you to actually do it for them. From a corporate mentality point of view, they are essentially buying a product, and they expect that product to do the job. But this is not the case. They're actually buying an operational procedure. You have to go in and at some point say, hey guys, you need to connect here. You need to basically start talking to each other. You need to change your internal culture a little bit. It's a conversation that's really hard to have at any level, much more a high-level agency level where they sort of expect to be a plug-and-play kind of thing where there's a price tag involved and a solution comes out at the other end. So I'm really interested to see how you approach it. How do you address it?
First, much like I think every other agency, the customer is in charge, right? We are brought in to do what needs to be done, and we're trying to influence them more holistically across the board. We've had many cases where we walk in and they say, hi, we need you to do SEO. We want organic traffic. And we say, okay, and are you doing pay-per-click? Well, yes, but that's handled by somebody else. And are you doing social? And yes, we've got that covered. That's handled by these people in this other city. And are they coordinating anything? No. And can we talk to them? Well, that'd be hard, and we can't even talk to them. The marketing department doesn't get to talk to the social media department. Or in large corporations, God forbid they have 2 or 3 domains, and the domains are managed by different people in different cities, and they're bidding on the same terms against each other. And all this has gone on in corporations for years. We've had to sort of go in and educate them that it isn't just one piece. Right now, today, performance and mobile ready, mobile friendliness, those are part of the algorithm. And Twitter, we believe, is going to be a massive influence, at least in a burst mode, about influencing what people see in a search result. And I think it's especially going to be true on a mobile device. So when you go through the process of thinking that things outside of marketing are influencing traffic, you need to back away and look at traffic. Look at the sources of traffic and decide that traffic is what your goal is. SEO is one form of traffic. Pay-per-click is one form of traffic. Social media actually has more components for traffic, but it's a form of traffic. And unless you get all these people coordinated, you're going to have some difficulty actually getting the traffic you deserve or want. And I would bet you that 2 to 5 years from now, if you don't start today coordinating and making it so that it's a cohesive program, 2 to 5 years from now, your competition will be beating you, and then you've got a 1-year catch-up if you can. And brands are going to get eaten alive. They're way behind the curve, and organizationally, I think they have some problem adapting.
Yep, absolutely. On that note, we've got a question coming up. There's a comment from the stream. Alex, would you mind bringing it up, please?
Yeah, so again, this fits in perfectly. Deborah Norton asks about if tweets are now going to be a part of the Google SERP, where do you see Google Plus going in the future? And Chelsea thinking about, well, Google Plus posts already show up in search, but then they kind of got into this territory of, are tweets going to compete with Google Plus posts? Are they just, as you mentioned, are they different sources of traffic? Where do you see this going, Bruce?
My personal view, well, every time I've ever tried to second guess Google, it hasn't been as easy as one would think.
I think that goes for all of us.
When Google started doing local results, I did a presentation at a conference, and I had 22 different forms of rendering in the search results for local. I think that Google is going to experiment. I think we're going to see tweets show up if they're very high volume. I think that they're going to influence if they're medium volume, and it's just going to be a minor variable if it isn't. If it's low traffic, 1, 2, 3 tweets, things like that. I don't know that Google is ever going to really bring back a Google Plus the way people think of it as social, but it's still influencing things. Let's take the author tag real fast. Google said they're no longer going to be showing it in the Google search results, and they don't. Google never said they're ignoring it. They just said they're not putting it in the search results. So it may be that a lot of these things, Google Plus or Twitter, or should Google pick up some live information, better information from any other social platform? It is entirely possible that you're going to see Google showing this stuff or not, but it will influence results. Image search. What happens if a Pinterest interface happens, and now the activity in Pinterest is influencing image search as it shows up on a Google search result page? I can't say that it won't happen. I've tried to second guess Google for years, and every time I second guess, they go and do something different or do it 5 ways and change their mind. I believe that Twitter will influence search results, but it will be for 24 to 48 hours based on a lot of activity. If there's a natural disaster, Twitter is going to influence things. You know, the best site is going to promote itself by the fact that everybody's talking about that site as being the solution. I don't know that Google Plus is going to do much. You know, we post there, you post there, everybody posts there. I'm not sure what the ultimate influence is going to be on ranking for an individual website or anything else. It may be more of a news burden, you know, shows up as a news item. But yeah, I think the deal going back to Twitter, considering there was one and it went away and now it's back, signifies, to me at least, that Google is seeing the signal influence as being something that improves the general applicability of a website to a query.
Yep.
And I expect to see a lot of that.
That's brilliant. We before the Hangout started out, we actually had a poll going, and Alex, is it possible to bring it up at all and see how it's doing at the moment?
Yeah, so our poll was about what is the state of SEO, and it hasn't changed a whole lot. It looks like SEO is evolving, is still the top choice with 63% of voters sticking with that. I'm kind of surprised that we still have the 10% that say that SEO is dead. And then we have 18% sticking with content writing and SEO are now the same, which would be an interesting thing to talk about, and 8% saying social marketing has replaced SEO.
Okay, that's interesting. We'll see now. I mean, everything we've been discussing up until now has been about the holistic approach to search, about the convergence of a lot of different disciplines, whether it's technical SEO, content writing, marketing, and branding. So really, let's talk about this convergence now, Bruce, because that in itself is what is guiding many of the practices of search engine optimizers. So how is that affecting the way that you operate as an agency internally, in terms of the training of your people, in terms of the preparation that you do in order to meet this?
Sure, I'd love to. I want to answer that. I have a quick comment, if I may, about the survey.
Yes.
I would easily, as an agency, view, in my agency hat on, I would view the 10% that SEO is dead are the people that either got burned by it or the only way they thought SEO worked was it was links, and links are pretty much dead. We have a lot of people that lost faith in SEO because the only SEO they knew was spam. And if, you know, spam is dead, then SEO is dead. And I think that's perhaps an improper way of doing it. Social hasn't replaced SEO. And if you look at any kind of attribution model, what you're going to find is that when you do things socially, organic search traffic goes up, a direct correlation. And it's the attribution, I think, that fails. And I think that it is a stimulus response. From an SEO point of view, most people think SEO starts when they do the query. But from a traffic point of view, traffic starts when you plant the seed in their brain to go do the query.
Yes.
And social actually is upstream of the organic query. It causes people to think of doing the query. From a traffic point of view, it's totally cohesive with the program. From an SEO point of view, a lot of people perceive that if you can get upstream and cause them to do the query more often, that is the new SEO. But the fact is, if you don't rank in the search engines at all, it doesn't matter that you trigger them to go do the query, because you're not going to get the traffic anyhow. The only thing social can do is bypass the query by providing direct links. And that can reach your audience, and it can be efficient, and it can be effective. But I see it still as never ever replacing SEO, but being fully complementary. That's where that goes.
Everything you said sort of reflects your cube principle in the multi-layered approach to everything. You can't just start isolating strands, applying them and hoping that this will do because for whatever reason the person doing it finds it easy for them to do. Which brings us now to how do you deal with all that internally, because running an agency and maintaining that kind of high-level commitment to that approach is a task in itself.
Yes. The hardest part about doing it at an agency is we hire both senior and interns here. The interns become intermediates and become senior. We typically go with the outliers approach, 10,000 hours to be an expert, which on the internet, of course, since 1 year is 7 years, like dog years, 10,000 hours goes real fast in an agency. We have a couple of things. Everybody that comes into this company has to go through training, and we have formal training programs. We have a full immersion program. Even when we hire a senior, for the first 2 months, they don't have projects. So we have that as a requirement. We believe also that in order to be a leader, you have to actually pay attention to what's going on out there. And this is a little bit of a variance from what people can do when they're in-house. We assign about 120 hours a month of work, of actual project work, to every one of the employees, and we're expecting that the other 50 hours a month is spent on education, reading, paying attention, classes, courses, anything, webinars, going to conferences. We expect that our staff has, and we provide for our staff, sufficient time for them to be knowledgeable in every change that happens within 24 hours. That's what we expect. From a structure point of view, everybody is in production. That isn't to say we don't have people that focus on SEO and people that focus on pay-per-click and design and content separately, but they're all logically connected in like the same room. They're all right here together. And when pay-per-click is 30 feet from SEO, and they're working on the same projects, and when we have a call with the client, it's, by the way, one call. SEO is in the room, pay-per-click is in the room, and they hear each other talk, and they know what the status is, and they share information, and what SEO says, the pay-per-click team hears, and vice versa, and they hear the customer express their concerns about traffic, and they're all focused on traffic. We focus on traffic. SEO doesn't focus on rankings other than as a tool for traffic. Social does the same thing. Content does the same thing. We're after the traffic. we've gone way out of our way to make the team work as a team.
Okay, that's fantastic. And I think you're talking a lot about internal culture and how you build it in your company, which I think in itself, having read very recently the book by Eric Smith, How Google Works, it funnily enough, it echoes very much of that layout and the setup where, all the different teams work in a very closed and open environment where they're within arm's reach of each other for that flow of information to actually take place, which I think is commendable. We have a comment on culture as it happens, which seems to fit in with what you just said. Alex, if you want.
Yeah, we do. And actually, Cynthia Turcotte's question here, well, her comment here really started a really interesting conversation in Google+. And she mentioned, because I just put out the question, I was like, what do you guys think about this discussion about internal culture? And she wrote, internal culture, I'm still trying to combat the whole if you build it, they will come mentality, where they think one-off SEO is all that is ever needed. So what this really brings up, for me at least, is where do you start if we're trying to make this transition? Do you start with internal culture, or do you combat the one-off SEO first, or can they work together?
We've seen it all the time. It's a little bit like, when is SEO done? I mean, in a normal world, SEO will be done when Google stops changing things and your competitors are all dead. Because
logically,
if you do a query and get 1 million results, and each of those 1 million results are changed once per year, you still have a whole lot of results changing every day. 30,000 results are changing every day. That's a lot of modification to contend with, and I don't think you ever get out of it. So the one-up mentality is more like, I ran one ad last year, how come my phone isn't ringing? It is a battle, it is a race, it is competitive, and it just never ends. But one of the best things that we do, and I don't know that it's secret, but I'll just mention it. When we talk to people, we find that the internal culture will spend 100 hours fixing a bug that affects 1% of their user base. This web page doesn't work in Safari. 1% of the people will ever see it, and they'll stop the presses and fix that bug. But if making an SEO change can increase your traffic 30%, they always think that's nice to have. What we do is we tell them that the SEO bug in their system, by not fixing this, is giving their competition that 30%. They're losing 30% traffic because of this SEO bug, and you have to fix it. And if you can culturally get management to understand you're giving competition an advantage by not constantly striving to be first and to beat the competition, if you don't get the culture to think of SEO as really being to improve the way you relate to your clients and generate that traffic, and you're going to give it to your competition if you don't do it day in and day out. If you don't get people to understand it's a bug, they will never give it a priority. We constantly see organizations spend time fixing things that are not generating hardly any traffic, if any, but things that will change their lives they don't put any effort into. And it does take almost a top-down approach.
Yep.
One-time SEO isn't going to cut it until nothing else is changing.
And I think you're making a very important point here, which is basically thinking the mindset of the companies you work with and beginning to bridge the gap by actually speaking their language and helping them see what they don't see. And I think that's a communication approach that requires maturity from the agency itself, and also a certain level of empathy for the organizations it works with, because they do want to get better. It's just that their focus is in the wrong place. I think that is a lesson there to be learned straight away.
Yeah, and I can, day in and day out say this is good or this is bad, or fix this title tag, or you have duplicate. I mean, we have a checklist we run of over 300 items when we check out websites. I can nitpick you to death, but the fact is, most of the time, we give things to our responsible person, generally somebody in marketing, and they take it down to their web developer who says, I'm busy. And, it doesn't get implemented and the traffic doesn't get realized. And as an agency, one of our big problems is we give so many things that are clearly incorrect and have to be repaired to the client that they start piling up. Mm-hmm. And then they don't accomplish what they want to accomplish. And months, maybe a year into the project, they suddenly say, oh, it's time for a renewal of the agreement. And they look at it and say, what have we accomplished? And that is the
your fault, right?
Yeah, it's our fault because we didn't generate all this traffic for them, but they haven't implemented it. And I think that education within the client environment is pretty much a requirement. If you can get people to understand it's a bug, understand you can change their lives by generating 30% more traffic. Generally, you can get the right people involved. One of the best successes we've had is to convince the chief financial officer this works. Believe it or not, that person cares about revenue. That's
yes.
their job. And they will be a pretty strong advocate come budget time for, hey, where's your SEO line?
Yeah, and I think, again, you're outlining a very important strategy, which companies which do SEO, or even individuals, don't always implement. And it's that forging of relationships, identification of allies within the company, developing the kind of conduit that allows a development of trust to take place, which then leads to everything else. And I think, again, that's really important. And I've seen it time and again when it doesn't really happen. And we come down to the crunch point where it's always the SEO agency's fault for not delivering on what they promised. So you're absolutely right.
One of the things that's part of the job for an in-house person responsible for traffic, and generally they'll be responsible for SEO and PPC maybe together, maybe social influence, but they are expected to do the job. They're not expected to spend 2 hours a day reading about the job. They're expected to already know it. And the companies generally forget that it's a moving target.
Yes.
So they'll skimp on education, and they'll skimp on conferences, and they'll skimp on, I'm going to give you the 2 hours a day to keep up on your reading. And they won't allow the SEO in-house person to really go around the company and socialize internally with the web developers and the pay-per-click team and talk to different managers that are influencers, if not stakeholders. And they're expected to sort of sit in their office or cubicle and type away, and that's going to be SEO, and where's my traffic? And, it's not an island, and it can't do that.
And on that note, we've got a comment coming which is tangentially related to what you just said in terms of the social impact and the broad level of SEO. And Alex, if you wouldn't mind bringing it up, please.
Yeah, so Jason, I want to say Daryl or Darrell, either way, sorry Jason, before this comment he mentioned that he noticed cited by showing up in his search results. So after his first comment he came up with, he said, light bulb, does cited by's appearance in usual search have a direct relationship with our social plugin, the social structured data we can now build into our websites?
New. I don't know. And that's not necessarily a great answer because yes, you can build things into your website. There's all sorts of tags, Twitter tags, for instance, I would say need to be tested and see if that actually does quite a bit. It isn't clear that this is anything more than the publisher tag or the author tag used to be, or it may relate more to the social plugin. And I would have to do some more testing and experimentation on it. We do know that Google has added a number of other tags. One of the interesting things is, for instance, we did a search for hammer, then we did a search for tools, and on the tools response page in Google, we actually found entries that said, this is influenced by your prior search for hammer. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing more of that. That just showed up as well. I think Google always experiments, and they experiment live. They gather the data, it survives for 2-3 weeks, and then it goes away. Cited by is probably a really good thing, provided it's cited by something that is a trusted resource. And all of that follows the concept of EAT, expertness, authority, and trust, that Google has talked about secretly, but yes. That everybody knows. But
yes.
And
I was going to say, yeah, go on.
If you're an authority and you're a trusted authority, I think cited by would make sense, but I don't know that Google is going to continue to do it. As soon as something like that happens, spammers are going to go to the people that are being cited and pay them to cite them too. This is going to quickly be a manipulated area, and I'd be very concerned that it is short-lived. Does that mean you shouldn't do it? No. Of course you should if it is contributing today, but you should understand it may be short-lived. Google does that all the time.
Exactly.
So on a related note, it's slightly related. It's a pretty big question, in my opinion. But John Dietrich asks, how does the semantic web integrate into the SEO process as it exists today and as it will exist in the near future?
Right.
Just
Bruce?
a quick question.
Yes.
Yeah, we have how many minutes left?
About 90 seconds.
90 seconds.
As much as you want, actually.
We're right on top of that. Let me just say, sure, it is an influence. There's no doubt that it's an influence. And Google is looking at ways to get around ambiguity and get around determining what it is you're talking about and how that is actually going to be seen in the future is subject to interpretation. I think what we're dealing with here is, first of all, we're all followers to some extent of Google. We can anticipate where Google's going. Google cares about whether they profess it or not. They care about the relationship between words. They care about the relationship between content on multiple pages within your website, and they care about the relationship between your web pages and other websites. Right? That's linking. They care about the relationship between your site and your audience, and that would be more of a Twitter thing. All of this, come the end of the day, it's all something that we should do. If there's 200 variables in the algorithm, what variable do we ignore? And my opinion is we don't ignore any. We understand as much as we can about all of them, and we do them all. And that's the best we can hope for.
Absolutely brilliant. Okay. And I think on that note, then the next question fits pretty much into what we've just been discussing, which is about branding, because branding is such a sort of socially driven concept, but at the same time it's governed by very hard-edged specifics, which have to do with marketing, have to do with the development of trust, the perceived development of trust, and how that impacts on the psychological element of the consumer. So branding comes now under the purview of SEO and search engine optimization because it does play a role in this. It does forge relationships, it does drive traffic and results. So how does that now fit into the SEO toolbox?
It fits in relative to, again, expertness, authority, and trust. Brands are trusted. Generally, brands are authorities, and the site or content on the site is generally given expert status. So if Google is actually going in the direction that we read a year ago into that way, and the Google method of implementation is sort of turning up the dial slowly, right? I expect that 2 years from now it will be far more important. And brands may very well be natural survivors because they're going to catch up.
Yep.
Until they catch up, it's going to be a little bit of a difficult thing. But I think that what we're dealing with also is sort of a problem. Marketers are trained to a certain degree about brand. And brand in a social world and in an SEO world, I don't think matches what branding is. And that's my opinion. And that's where I think the difference between an SEO and a good SEO is. It's like a logo. A logo is supposed to be a representation of what you stand for, not just a pretty picture. Your brand has to stand for something. But when you think of brand, most people think of, socially, they think of reputation management, or they think of just promoting the brand and getting people to see your name. Well, getting people to see your name does not promote what you stand for. It just gets people to see your name. Take Twitter. I can retweet all day long. That doesn't establish me as an expert because I'm retweeting other people's posts. It gets my name out there. It improves recognition of the brand, but it doesn't build the brand.
Yep.
It just, I'm screaming the same word from the top of every roof over and over and over again. People will hear it, but they won't know what it means.
Yes.
And for social to perform correctly at a branding level, SEO and pay-per-click at a branding level, what we need to do is actually try to determine what the brand stands for, who cares, and how to reach that audience socially, and how to engage that audience socially, and how to get people that are really strong advocates for the brand to represent the brand socially, right? Influencers that are in an area that care about what it is that we stand for. And but most people just sort of think that social media is just scream the same thing over and over and over again, and it builds the brand. And I think that's where a lot of people fail.
It's a transitioning into the new mentality, which requires an understanding that it's not just a broadcast platform; it's actually an engagement platform in the full sense of the word.
Correct.
And that entails, again, building a bridge with your audience that allows communication of values. It allows communication in the first place. It allows real trust to actually build up, because the moment a company behaves like that, the first fear they have is that they're actually losing control of their brand, because how it's defined goes from their advertising and their marketing and their brochures and their leaflets and their websites to the audience perception, which they feel they have no control over. So it does require kind of...
Let's back up to my earlier statement that many SEOs grew up as programmers, right? They never had a formal marketing course in many cases, or read one book kind of thing. They are just thinking that they are the auto mechanic of your website that gets it purring again. I mean, if you take that approach and do not recognize the effect your website has on perception of brand, you're going to have a problem. Every SEO project, everybody that's listening that is an in-house SEO that has a consultant, or to think back about, did the consultant even ask them what their brand message was, or who their best audience is, or can I see your social media campaign? I mean, so many SEOs are islands nowadays. And that's what really, really changes things. If you want to be a great SEO, you have to know what's going on across the board. And the cornerstone of your program is traffic. And it is going to be hurt if you do not propagate a brand, because eventually you're not going to have the trust. You're not going to have the expertness. You're not going to have the authority. And Google will figure that out, and you're going to decay. If you have rankings now, and it's only because of technical skills, you can expect it to go away if you do not do something to establish your site around your brand.
True. That's so true. And it's a ticking clock for many people. Okay, we're reaching the end of our program now. And Alex, are there any comments which we need to address?
There's only there's one question that we haven't addressed yet, and that's from Marilyn Moore. And she asked a while ago, since Google's goal is to make money, and if 80% of clicks are organic, does that have implications for search?
Yeah. So let's, and again, I'm not Google, but let me hypothesize the way this works. Google's a public company. Obviously, they have an obligation to make money. That's what happens. And they spend a lot of money in order to make a lot of money. And that's great. Let's take 80% of the clicks are organic, and that is on the left-hand side of the page, below the pay-per-click ads that might appear. The way to make money, technically, is to have more money-making opportunities in the upper left-hand corner of that search result page. Now, a lot of the search result page could be, if it's a product, could be occupied by what, shopping pages, the PLA-type pages. You could monetize, in theory, videos across to YouTube. Let's think about how they can make money. The biggest opportunity to make money, in my opinion, is in places, the local results. You see, local results are effectively Google's property. It's like a directory. And if Google owns it and you opt into it, you give Google varying permission to use that information. And you don't even need a website to appear there. And you can dominate the search results. So how can Google make money? They can't put ads in the public trust information area, the true organic area. But they can put ads or cell phone numbers or quick links or whatever they might want to eventually dream up. Some form of even some inclusion fee where if you pay to be certified, you're at the top of the list, and if you're not, you're not. Because it's their directory. Yellow Pages have been doing it for years. The more you buy, the bigger your ad, and the more prominent it is in the book. Well, Google could look at the organic opportunity that way. And since they own that directory, those places entries, they can do whatever they want. And if 80% of the clicks are on the left side, I think that what we're going to see is a lot of the local directories are going to start having opportunities for revenue. And somehow those entries are going to magically appear formatted much more like you see the formats for organic entries today. If the user doesn't know the difference, they're going to click on them, and Google's going to make money. And as a public company, that's their business. I expect that suddenly opportunities to make money will be more prominent on the page. We've seen organic entries drop as low as 4 organic entries per page on the first page of Google search results. approximately 90% of all clicks are on the first page of Google search results. Google is providing answers, knowledge information. They're providing, through places, the kind of thing where you can instantly get a hold of a client. Those are opportunities for Google to make money, and I expect fully for Google to get into that space and start putting more on the left-hand side. They're pretty much prohibited from selling an ad in an organic public trust area. The Federal Trade Commission doesn't like that, but the directory is theirs and they can do what they want. I see that as their next opportunity.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. Okay, and wrapping up now, just one final question. Suppose a struggling webmaster shared a cab ride with you. It's a 5-minute cab ride. In those 5 minutes, they ask you, "Hey, what should I do to optimize my website?" What would you say?
Hire a consultant. And I happen to know one. You know, in many cases, it depends on whether they've done it before or haven't done it before. If they are going to do it themselves, I personally, and this is not self-promotion, but we rewrote 20-some thousand words, a free tutorial on our website that walks you through 18 major areas of SEO with free tools integrated right into the page, and we give it away. It's on our website under SEO, it's under tutorial. We walk you through that. I think education is where you start.
Yeah.
You have to understand what your options are. The first thing you do after you're educated is find some tools, run them on your site. You fix the things that are broken before you fix and enhance the things that are not broken. Because the things that are broken are commonly more preventing ranking than anything else. You have to determine if you have a penalty. Many times sites have had prior SEOs. 5 years ago, the prior marketing guy had an SEO company that was buying links for him. Those links are probably still there, and you could have a soft penalty that's algorithmically hurting you. All these things can be going on. Somehow you need to self-audit. Somehow you need to parametrically fix the things that are broken. And you need to have the training and tools to be able to do it if it's a do-it-yourself type program. Our website, bruceclay.com, has always been focused on giving away information. It's not a marketing site per se. It's a technical site. And one of the things that does happen, and I'm sort of admitting this, is that when we give away a lot of technical information, at the end of the day, what we find is that the more information we give away, the more people have in the way of trust, and the more they decide, hey, I'm too busy to do this. If you think SEO is easy and it's, you know, simple, then you don't understand it well enough. The biggest problem, if I were to say the biggest problem right now in getting SEO traffic is, well, the saying I use, don't ever be surprised by the results you don't get for the work you didn't do. If you do the wrong work or don't do work, don't expect to get results. You have to, you know, you have to be smart enough to figure that out. And by the way, having tools are great, but there's a difference between data and wisdom. And
it's getting very rarefied. You're absolutely right, totally right on this.
So I'd say education is pretty much at the top of the list.
Awesome. That's really awesome. Okay, and with that, we are reaching the end of the show. For all of you who watched today, there are a few takeaways to take away with you. One is, don't just focus on what's happening now. Look ahead. Try and be predictive in the way you work. Try and do the right thing, because the right thing has always worked in the past. smtbruceclay.com, Bruce Clay Inc. Case in point, it has always worked for them, and they've always advocated for that. Do go to the website, bruceclay.com, under SEO, second link down, it's tools. You will find a free resource for you. Do check it out. It has been very good. I would like to thank Bruce for joining us today, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking part today. I'm sorry about the delay in starting out, but you must admit the conversation got very interesting very quickly. Thank you very much. Take care, and bye-bye.
Thank you.